Lecture we have seen about the external features of spinal. Today we are going to see about the internal structure of spinal. And to see the internal structure, we have to take cross section of spinal cord. Here you can see that this is the cross section of spinal cord, where there is presence of H-shaped gray matter in the center, which is surrounded by white matter. As you know that anterior median fissure and posterior median sulcus divides the spinal cord into two equal halves. Because of these two equal halves, in each half there is presence of comma-shaped gray matter. This comma-shaped gray matter is connected across the midline by a transverse gray commissure. Comma-shaped gray matter is connected across the midline by a transverse gray commissure. In the center of transverse gray commissure, there is presence of central canal. And in this central canal, there is presence of cerebrospinal fluid. This central canal is present throughout the spinal cord. Above it terminate in the fourth ventricle, which is present between the upper part of medulla and lower part of pons in front and cerebellum behind. Whereas below it terminates in a terminal ventricle, which is present in conus medullaris. And you must be knowing what is conus medullaris. Conus medullaris is a lower conical end of spinal cord, which is present at the level of lower border of L1 vertebra. So the central canal ends below at conus medullaris, which is where there is presence of terminal ventricle. Now, because of this transverse gray commissure, this comma-shaped mass of gray matter is divided into two horns or two columns. The part which is present anterior to the transverse gray commissure is called anterior horn or anterior column, whereas the part posterior to the gray commissure is called posterior column or posterior horn. Now this type of gray matter is present throughout the spinal cord. But in thoracic region and upper to lumbar segments, there is presence of a lateral horn or lateral column, which is nothing but the projection of gray matter laterally between posterior and anterior horn, or you can say it is a projection of gray matter along the or opposite to the transverse gray commissure. Now this is the lateral horn or lateral column. So there are three horns: posterior horn, lateral horn, and anterior horn. So here you can see this is the cross section of spinal cord, where you can see this is the posterior horn, this is anterior horn, and this is lateral horn. That means this is a section of transverse section of spinal cord at the level of thoracic region. So here also you can see there is H-shaped gray matter. In the center there is presence of transverse gray commissure, and the center of transverse gray commissure there is central canal. Because of this transverse gray commissure, the gray matter is divided into anterior and posterior horns. And this type of gray matter is present along the entire length of spinal cord, whereas in the thoracic region there is presence of another horn that is nothing but the lateral horn. Now this gray matter is not same at all the levels of spinal cord. You can see this is the cervical region, this is the thoracic region, lumbar and sacral region. Now this here the gray matter is more. You can see in the cervical region, gray matter is more. In the lumbosacral region, the gray matter is more. So, why this is so? This is because we have also seen along at the time of external features of spinal cord that there is enlargement of spinal cord in the cervical and lumbosacral region, because from this region the motor nerves they are arising, they supply the upper extremity, and from the lumbosacral region the whatever the motor nerves they are arising, they will supply the lower extremity along with lower girdle. So here there is presence of large amount of motor neurons, and that's why here in the anterior horn the gray matter is more. So the gray matter is more in the anterior horn in the cervical segment as well as lumbosacral segment. Thus, the amount of gray matter is directly proportional to mass of tissue it supplies. As we know, here you can see that this is the anterior horn. This is the posterior horn. This anterior horn is broad, whereas posterior horn is long and elongated. So, this posterior long and elongated horn is connected, it opens, it is attached to the surface of spinal cord. It is connected to the surface of spinal cord with the help of a gelatinous substance called substantia gelatinosa, which is a translucent neural tissue. So the posterior horn of spinal gray matter is connected to the surface of spinal cord with the help of substantia gelatinosa, which is a translucent neural tissue, whereas the anterior horn is not connected to the surface of spinal cord. So posterior horn is long and narrow. Here you can see this is the spinal cord, and along the entire length of spinal cord there is presence of central canal, and this central canal above opens into a diamond-shaped fourth ventricle which is present between medulla and pons in front and cerebellum behind, whereas below it terminates in the terminal ventricle which is present in the conus medullaris, which is nothing but the lower end of spinal cord. Now, what are the various structures which are present in the gray matter of spinal cord? In the gray matter of spinal cord, just similar to other part of the brain, there is presence of nerve cells, neuroglial cells, and blood vessels. You know there are different types of nerve cells like oligodendrocyte, microglia, ependymal cells, and astrocells. The nerve cells which are present in the gray matter of spinal cord, they are of two types and they are classified according to their structure and according to their function. So according to structure, the nerve cells of the gray matter, they are divided into two types, Golgi 1 and Golgi 2. Whereas according to function, they are classified as motor neurons, sensory neuron, and interneurons. Whereas motor neurons are of three types, alpha motor neuron, beta motor neuron, and gamma motor neuron. All these nerve cells, they are multipolar in nature. Now let us see about the structural classification of nerve cells. So according to structure, the nerve cells in the gray matter of spinal cord, they are of two types. Number one is Golgi type 1 and another is Golgi type 2. What do you mean by Golgi type 1? In Golgi type 1, the cells they are having long axon. So as the cells they are having long axon, they will leave the gray matter. So what will be the fate of Golgi type 1 cell? They will either join the anterior nerve and come out as a motor nerve, or they may take part in the formation of nerve tracts, which may be ascending or may be descending. The second is Golgi type 2 cells. In Golgi type 2 cells, the cells, they are having short axon. So they never leave the gray matter. They remain intersegmental or they may be intrasegmental. Now coming to the structure, types of nerve according to their function. According to function, the nerve cells, they are of three types: motor neuron, sensory neurons, and interneurons. Now these motor neurons of gray matter of spinal cord, they are known as lower motor neuron. You also know there are upper motor neuron also. There is a difference between lower motor neuron and upper motor neuron that we are going to discuss along with the tracks. But here just remember that lower motor neuron, they are arising from the anterior horn and they are going towards the effector organ. They are, for example, here in this skeletal muscle. So the lower motor neuron is arising from the anterior horn and then going up to the skeletal muscle. Now where this motor neuron is present? These motor neurons, they are present in the anterior horn. Axons of this motor neuron, they form a final path through the anterior root of spinal nerve and reach the striated muscle. This we have already discussed at the time of formation of spinal nerve. Now, you must be knowing the structure of skeletal muscle. This we have studied in general anatomy as well as in the histology. So, what is the structure of the skeletal muscle? The skeletal muscle consists of extrafusal fibers. Inside the extrafusal fibers, there is presence of muscle spindle, and inside the muscle spindle, there is presence of intrafusal fibers. Now, these intrafusal fibers, they may be nuclear bag fibers or nuclear chain fibers. This will depend upon the arrangement of nuclei, whether they are present in the chain or whether they are collected just like a bag. So, the motor neurons, which are also known as lower motor neuron, they are situated in the anterior horn and they are of three types depending upon their size. The alpha motor neurons, they are large neurons. Their size is more than 25 micron. And they supply extrafusal fibers of striated muscle. They will supply extrafusal fibers of the striated muscle. Whereas gamma motor neuron, they are small size. Their size ranges from 10 to 15 micron and they will supply intrafusal fibers which are present within the muscle spindle. Whereas beta neuron, they are of intermediate size and they supply both extrafusal as well as intrafusal fibers. So the motor neurons, they are present in the anterior horn and they are of three types depending upon their size: alpha, beta, and gamma. Now coming to the another type of neurons which are present in the gray matter of the spinal cord, they are sensory neurons. And the sensory neurons, they are present in the posterior horn. So what is the function? From where they come? They come from, they bring the sensory information. They bring the sensory information to the dorsal root and they convey it to the higher centers. So sensory neurons, they relay sensory information to different parts of the brain and they enter the gray matter of the spinal cord through the dorsal root. Then coming to the interneurons. These interneurons, they are present throughout the gray matter of the spinal cord. They are small neuron and they connect motor neuron to the sensory neuron. They are mainly concerned with the reflex activity, reflex arches, reflex activities. They may be excitatory or they may be inhibitory in nature. So this is about the sensory neuron and interneuron. So in the gray matter of spinal cord, there are presence of two types of neurons depending upon structure and function. Depending upon the structure, they are Golgi 1, Golgi 2. Depending upon their function, sensory, motor, and interneurons. Now let us see what happens to these cells, as there are these various types of cells which are present in the gray matter of the spinal cord. These cells, whatever we have discussed now, all these cells, they form groups and they lie in the horn of spinal cord in the form of cell groups. So there is formation of cell groups in the anterior horn, in the posterior horn, as well as in the lateral horn. So which groups are present in the anterior horn? Anterior horn is broad. So the cell groups, they are arranged in the transverse manner. So they are grouped as medial group, lateral group, and central group. Whereas as the posterior horn is long and elongated, here the cell groups, they are arranged in the longitudinal column. So let us see what is the fate of these cell groups. So first we will see about the cell groups which are present in the anterior horn. As the cell groups in the anterior horn, they are nothing but the lower motor neurons. These lower motor neurons, they are arranged in medial group, lateral group, and central group. These medial group extends along the entire length of spinal cord. And this medial group is divided into ventromedial and ventrolateral parts. What is the function of these medial group cells? These medial group cells, they supplies muscles of neck and trunk, including muscles of abdominal wall and intercostal muscles. So the medial group extends throughout the spinal cord and it supplies the muscles of neck and trunk. Whereas lateral group, here you can see this is the lateral group. This lateral group is present in the cervical and lumbosacral enlargement only. And you know, the nerves, motor nerves, which are arising from the cervical and lumbosacral enlargement, they are supplying muscles of limb, upper limb as well as lower limb. So the nerve cells which are present in the lateral group, they supplies muscles of limbs. Coming to the central group. Now this central group forms three definite nuclei. So in the central group, there is formation of three nuclei. One is phrenic nucleus. This phrenic nucleus extends from C3 to C5 segments of spinal cord, and then it forms a nerve which is called phrenic nerve, which supplies diaphragm. And you might be remembering that there is one more nerve which is having same root value C3, C4 and C5, which is nothing but the suprascapular nerve. And this suprascapular nerve supplies supraspinatus and infraspinatus muscles of the shoulder. Now whenever there is irritation of diaphragm, which may occur due to various reasons, there may be mainly because of accumulation of fluid or blood in the peritoneal cavity, it will lead to irritation of diaphragm. And whenever there is irritation of diaphragm, there is shoulder tip pain. Why this is so? This is because of the same root value of phrenic nerve and suprascapular nerve. And this is known as Kher sign, K-E-H-R, Kher sign. What is Kher sign? It is because of irritation of diaphragm. Irritation of diaphragm occurs because of n number of causes are there. There is accumulation of blood. Blood may accumulate because of splenic rupture, because of rupture, ectopic pregnancy, blunt trauma, or whatever the causes are there. There is accumulation of blood in the peritoneal cavity, and this peritoneal, because of this, diaphragm is irritated, and there is referred pain at the tip of the shoulder, as the suprascapular nerve and phrenic nerve, they are having same root value, and it is known as Kher sign, K-E-H-R. Then another nucleus is lumbosacral nucleus, which extends between L2 to S3 segments of the spinal cord. And the next nucleus is spinal nucleus of accessory nerve, which extends from C1 to C5 segments of the spinal cord. And this is the largest nucleus, which form the spinal root of accessory nerve. As you know that accessory nerve, the 11th cranial nerve, has two roots. One is cranial root, another is spinal root. This accessory root, the spinal root, is formed by the spinal nucleus, which extends from C1 to C5 segments of the spinal cord. So here you can see the comparison between the medial group and lateral group. Medial group extends throughout the spinal cord. Lateral group is present only in the cervical and lumbosacral region. Medial group supplies muscles of neck and trunk. Lateral group supplies muscles of limb. Now let us see the cell groups which are present in the posterior horn. In the posterior horn, as it is long and elongated, the groups, they are present in the elongated manner. So what are the various cell groups or nuclei they are formed in the posterior horn? There is presence of substantia gelatinosa of Rolando. Now this substantia gelatinosa of Rolando, it is present at the apex of the posterior horn, and it also extends throughout the spinal cord, and it is made up of Golgi, two types of neurons. The main function of substantia gelatinosa is to receive the afferent fibers from the posterior nerve root, and it conveys pain and temperature and touch sensation. So pain, temperature and touch sensation is conveyed to higher center through substantia gelatinosa. And above the spinal cord, this substantia gelatinosa continues as nucleus of spinal tract of trigeminal nerve. You might be knowing that each cranial nerve has certain nuclei, and the fibers, they are coming from these nuclei and they form a particular nerve. For example, here trigeminal nerve, which is the fifth cranial nerve. This fifth cranial nerve has 4 nuclei. One is motor nucleus, sensor nucleus, and this is spinal nucleus, and another is mesencephalic nucleus. Out of that, the spinal nucleus is coming from the is nothing but the continuation of substantia gelatinosa of Rolando. The another nucleus is nucleus proprius. Nucleus proprius. Now this nucleus proprius is present deep to the substantia gelatinosa, and it extends along the entire length of spinal cord. It receives afferents from the white column. This is the white column, posterior white column. So it receives afferent from the posterior white column. It receives afferent from the posterior white column, which are associated with proprioception. What is proprioception? Proprioception means sense of position, sense of joint movement, sense of discrimination, sense of vibration, sense of equilibrium, sense of balance. All these are nothing but the comes under proprioception. So the nucleus proprius is the largest nucleus of the posterior horn. It occupies the most of the part of the posterior horn, and it is related with proprioception. Then coming to the third nucleus, which is nothing but the nucleus dorsalis, which is also known as Clark column. Now this nucleus dorsalis is present along the medial aspect of the base of the posterior horn, and it projects slightly, or it bulges in the posterior white column also. It extends from C8 to L2, L3 segment, and it receives both proprioceptive as well as exteroceptive afferents from the trunk and lower limb. You know the meaning of proprioception. Now what is exteroceptive? Means sensation of pressure and pain. Sensation of pressure and temperature, it comes under exteroceptive sensation. Thus, the function of this nucleus dorsalis is mainly in the formation of posterior spinocerebellar tract. We are going to see in detail the posterior spinocerebellar tract along with the tracts. But just remember that nucleus dorsalis, which is present at the base of posterior horn, which extends from the C8 to L2, L3 level, and it is responsible for exteroceptive and proprioceptive sensation from trunk and lower limb. Then there is another nucleus which is present at the base of posterior horn, is visceral afferent nucleus. What do you mean by viscera? Viscera means the organs which are present in the abdominal cavity and thoracic cavity. Now this visceral afferent nucleus is present at the base of gray column, and it extends from T1 to L2 and S2 to S4 segments of the spinal cord. It receives afferent. From where it receives afferent? It receives afferent from dorsal nerve root and project it to the preganglionic visceral efferent nuclei of autonomic nervous system. That means visceral efferent nucleus is related with autonomic nervous system. Then coming to the cell groups which are present in the intermediate gray column. The cell groups which are present in the intermediate gray column. There are two cell groups. One is intermediomedial and there is intermediolateral. This intermediomedial group extends from S2 to S4 segments of the spinal cord, and it gives origin to preganglionic fibers of parasympathetic nervous system. That's why we say that parasympathetic, they are having sacral outflow. Similarly, intermediolateral nucleus extends from T1 to L2 segments of spinal cord, and it gives origin to preganglionic fibers of sympathetic nervous system. And hence we call that sympathetics, they are thoracolumbar in origin. So in the lateral horn, there are two nuclei, intermediomedial nucleus and intermediolateral nucleus. Both they are related with autonomic nervous system. Now, whatever nuclei they are present in the posterior horn, lateral horn, and anterior horn, these nuclei they are studied by the Swedish neuroscientist called Breuer-Rex, and he then classified. He then kept all these nuclei in the form of laminae, and he grouped these laminae according to structure and function of that particular nucleus. He mapped out this gray matter into 10 laminae extending from posterior horn to the anterior horn. For the use of this lamination, these laminae they are used for localization of terminal degenerating fibers. So how these laminae are present? Rex, he has kept this laminae in the form of Roman numerals extending from 1 to 10. Out of that, first to sixth laminae they are present in the posterior column, remaining they are present in the lateral and anterior column. Now the first laminae, which is present at the tip of posterior horn, is corresponding to the posterior marginal nucleus, and this posterior marginal nucleus is related with pain and temperature sensation. The second laminae corresponds to substantia gelatinosa, which is responsible for pain, temperature, and touch, whereas nucleus proprioceptus denotes third and fourth laminae. Fifth and sixth laminae denotes nucleus dorsalis. Seventh laminae denotes the nuclei which are present in the lateral horn. Eighth laminae denotes all the nuclei which are present along the medial part of the gray column, whereas ninth corresponds with the all the nuclei which are present in the lateral part of the gray column, and 10th laminae correspond with the area which is around the central canal. Now here you can see these are the this is the gray matter of the spinal cord, and these are the various laminae, and these are the various nuclei. So here again you can see in the first laminae corresponds with posterior marginal nucleus. Second laminae corresponds with the substantia nigra. Third and fourth corresponds with the nucleus proprioceptus. Fifth and sixth corresponds with the nucleus dorsalis. Intermediomedial and intermediolateral nucleus, they are present in the seventh laminae. Eighth laminae corresponds with the nuclei which are present along the medial aspect, whereas ninth laminae corresponds with all the nuclei which are present along the lateral aspect of the anterior horn, and 10th laminae they are present, they are responsible, they denotes the whatever nuclei which are present along the central canal or around the central canal. So all this is about the Rex lamin and gray matter. Now let us see about the white matter of the spinal cord. Now, as you know that there is a gray matter in the center, and this gray matter is surrounded by the white matter. In the white matter, there is presence of nerve fibers, and these nerve fibers, they are myelinated. And you also know that in the central nervous system, the nerve fibers, they are myelinated by oligodendrocytes, whereas in the peripheral nervous system, the nerve fibers, they are myelinated by Schwann cells. Now, as the nerve fibers, they are myelinated, the column is white in appearance. So, the white column is white in appearance because of presence of myelinated fibers. And there are three types of fibers which are present in the white matter of the spinal cord. One is sensory fibers, another is motor fibers, and third one is association fibers. Now, what do you mean by sensory fibers? In the sensory fibers, these are the fibers which are coming from dorsal nerve. They are coming from the dorsal nerve. So, they are mainly the primary central processes of cell bodies which are present in the dorsal root ganglia. The sensory fibers, they are also coming from the nuclei which are present in the spinal cord, and they run above to reach the supraspinal level. So two types of fibers, they form sensory fibers. Number one coming from the dorsal root, another from the nuclei of the spinal cord which reach the supraspinal level. The motor fibers, they are formed by the descending fibers, the fibers which are coming from the higher centers of the spinal cord. And the third one is association fibers. Now the association fibers, these are the fibers which originate and end in the spinal cord. So they are just like interneurons. There are three types of fibers: sensory fibers, motor fibers, and association fibers in the white column of spinal cord. Now this white column of the spinal cord is divided into three groups: anterior group, posterior group, and lateral group. What do you mean by anterior group? It is a part of the spinal cord between anterior median fissure and anterior horn, and it contains motor fibers. Then posterior white column, this is the posterior white column. It extends from posterior median sulcus to posterior horn of the gray matter, and it contains sensory fibers, whereas lateral horn extends between the posterior horn and anterior horn. So there is presence of three columns, which is also known as funiculi or fasciculi. So there is anterior funiculus, posterior funiculus, and lateral funiculus, or anterior column, posterior column, and lateral. Now, if you see the amount of white matter in the spinal cord at different levels, different segments, then you can realize that amount of white matter is more as we go up. So here you can say in the sacral segment, white matter is less. In the thoracic region, it is more. In the cervical region, it is again more. Why this is so? This is because the fibers which are forming various tracts, they get added as we go upwards. More and more ascending fibers, they get added. Whereas as we come down, more and more descending fibers, they decrease, they terminate at different level. So in the cervical region, the white fibers, they are more, whereas in the sacral region, they are less. This is about the structure of white matter of spinal cord. So today we have seen the structure of gray matter of the spinal cord and white matter of spinal cord. So the gray matter of spinal cord, we have seen there is presence of various nuclei, and they are located in the form of various cell groups, and Rex has given the laminar pattern. Whereas in the white matter, we have seen there is presence of various columns: posterior column, anterior column, posterior column, and lateral column. In each column, there are various fibers. These fibers are myelinated, and hence the appearance of this fiber is white matter, is white, and hence it is called white matter. As we go up, the amount of white matter is more, whereas gray matter is more only in the cervical and lumbosacral region. This is all about the internal structure of spinal cord. In the last lecture, we have seen about the external features of spinal cord. Now, in that lecture, we have seen that the spinal cord is a continuation of oblongata below the foramen magnum, and it extends from upper border of first cervical vertebra to the lower border of first lumbar vertebra. At its end, it is conical in nature, and hence it is called conus medullaris. So conus medullaris is the lower end of spinal cord, and it is present at the level of L1 vertebra. This spinal cord is covered by the three meninges, which are protective in nature, and this spinal cord is present again in the bony column, in the vertebral column. The pia mater, which is the innermost layer of the spinal cord, which continues downward as a phylum terminale, and it has many projections like subarachnoid septum, denticulate ligament, and linea splendens, which supports the spinal cord. At the lower end, there is presence of bunch of nerves, which is known as cauda equina. Why this bunch of nerve is formed? Because the length of spinal cord is more than the length of spinal segment. The spinal cord occupies only upper third of spinal vertebral column. So whatever the nerves, spinal nerves, which are arising from the particular spinal segment, they have to pass through the respective intervertebral foramen. So as we go down, the nerve has to go more and more down. It has to take a oblique or vertical route to reach that particular intervertebral segment, and that's why in the lower part there is formation of bunch of roots of the nerves, and they are called cauda equina. So the cauda equina is formed by roots of lower 10 spinal nerves. So which are lower 10 spinal nerves, 4 lumbar, 5 sacral, and 1 coccygeal. So these roots of these spinal nerve, they form cauda equina. Generally, there is a short note on cauda equina. So why cauda equina is formed, and what are the which nerve form the cauda equina? So I think you are clear about the external and internal structure of spinal cord. In the next lecture, we are going to see about the tracts. Thank you. If you have any problem, you can call.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.